This visual story will begin with who I am. I will mention how I got into the master's program of early childhood education, what drives me into studying applied behavior analysts. After I graduate from my master's, I hope to get accepted into the behavior analyst program and soon become an applied certified behavior analyst known as BCBA. My name is Robin Gonzalez. I grew up in Enbrook, Texas, part of the Rio Grande Valley. I am sister of two brothers. As a child, I was diagnosed with a condition static encephalopathy, which affected my speech, my ability to read, and my ability to comprehend. I was getting support and help from my parents and my school diagnostician. There were times I was getting anxious and scared to get called out in front of the class. Once the teacher called out on me, in my mind, I said, "What do I do? Are they going to make fun of me because I can't read?" These obstacles didn't hold me back due to the help from the school diagnostician. I was able to succeed independently and pass my standardized tests in schools. As years went by, I got accepted into the National Honor Society in high school and joined to play sports. I knew it takes someone as a role model, such as a school diagnostician, to overcome learning barriers. I decided to pursue a career in behavior analysis and the field of education. After graduating with honors, I attended college at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, where I studied biology and psychology. During college, I volunteered at the Autism Services Center at the university under the supervision of my professor, where I worked with children diagnosed with autism and other learning disabilities. By providing them with treatment, this drives me into deciding by pursuing a master's degree. I always had a passion for working with the children in the field of education. After graduating from college, I moved to San Antonio, Texas, where I decided to pursue a career in teaching. Another reason why I'm moving to San Antonio because I have close family living here and I love the community here. I fell in love with behavior analysts not because I like the principles of behavior, but because they gave me a preparation to strengthen my classroom management as a teacher. I found myself applying these principles in my classroom as of using positive or negative reinforcement, whether on field trips, lunchtime, and dismissal times. I had experience working with challenging students, but it gave me motivation to continue and apply the behavior analyst program. For 3 years of teaching, I now can relate to learning theories in my classroom, while I still love to teach fellow students. The idea of multiculturalism has brought me into my perspective with education. Working at Title I Jubilee Academies are one of the schools that take culturally responsive values seriously. If only all schools in the San Antonio area can use multiculturalism to represent all students' cultural identities. When it comes to working with children with learning disabilities, there are limited resources for intervention to ABA and special education services. My school district can provide only very limited special education resources to fill inclusion, but there still needs to be a small group intervention resource room and availability for accommodations for students to adapt in the classroom and behavioral barriers. Although teaching in classroom is not only to teach academics, I had also gained perspective about cultural norms that influence in all school communities. As a Hispanic educator, teaching in a community populated with economically disadvantaged students with limited resources to their educational rights, I want to gain knowledge in the field of interdisciplinary studies and behavior analysis by furthering my education by learning about how the education on how school systems operate to assist family and students in the field of education and ABA services. Module 1 begins with when we outline the American U.S. education school system, create a national budget for availability to school resources. This emphasizes the social-economic depth that aligns with our American school system today. Since COVID-19 occurred, achievement gaps and behavioral issues developed, and families were thrown into a financial crisis. Schools were forced to provide virtual learning to all students. This module relates on how our education system can give funding to resources on how, as we educators, can close COVID gaps and have financial assistance to assist students. Module 2 recognizes the importance of interdisciplinary studies on how they construct learning gaps and behavioral issues to adapt into a classroom setting. This module relates on how knowledge is built upon with assimilation and discovery, in which I build students' knowledge with hands-on activities and abstract thinking. As a future behavior therapist, I plan to acknowledge students' behavioral and learning obstacles by overcoming them to turning students into lifelong learners. Module 3 mentions about social injustice as being a political trend that pertains into our school systems, communities, and social class. This module recognizes that impact individuality and social class. As an educator, I must acknowledge students' cultural background because we must be openly acceptable. At my job, building relationships is a main key on what I learned in this topic of social injustice. Looking back as a child struggling with my condition, I'm already seeing a reflection of how much treatment students are receiving. I'm looking beyond my classroom walls as I promote motivation for students to collaborate with their peers. I hope my teaching skills can help manage students to adjust with positive reinforcement and give fair treatment. Module 4 accumulates with all learning theories that are mentioned in the classroom setting. The module mentions social culturalism, cognitivism, and behavioralism. Social constructivism is when students learn based on experiences with the world of peers. Cognitivism is when students learn based on chunking information together. Lastly, behavioralism is knowing when students develop a new behavior can begin with a cue or environmental stimulus. In this module, it relates on how, as an educator, use behavioralism as a key to my classroom management. It relates how physical environments can be the main factor of individuals creating behavioral and learning along with consequences and reinforcers that are used in the classroom setting. These learning theories serve as a guiding point as my area of concentration. I used to apply these principles of behavioralism into my classroom to de-escalate behavior. On the other hand, behavior analysts perform data-driven assessments to eliminate by measure and observing the frequency of the behavior. Finally, the last module begins how diversity can be taught in school settings. It relates to how my teaching methods can promote culturally responsive values in the classroom. When we embrace culturally sustained pedagogy, build a classroom climate to include all cultural barriers for all students regarding their race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and disability. Classrooms and small group interventions must be flexible to meet all instructional needs of all students. In my conclusion, for this course, this strengthens my belief that we must accumulate and collaborate with families to give their children the best quality of education. Module 3, we as educators are the main narration to build students into developing knowledge and abilities to express their social interests. Module 4 builds my knowledge on principles on how teachers can differentiate learning theories to construct with not only classroom management, but a student-centered environment. Therefore, my goal is to use my interdisciplinary knowledge to collaborate with my colleagues and to expand culturally responsive values into the field of behavior analysts.